All right, so I'm going to go over the process of protein synthesis or how proteins are made in the cell. So as we've already learned that DNA is the code for making proteins. And then if you remember that all of us have different codes because we all have different bases. All right, so how does the protein actually get made? So first, we need to know what the heck a protein is. So remember, proteins are the molecules in your body that give you all your different traits. They pretty much do all the different jobs that your body needs to happen. So, for example, they can carry things around like oxygen, they might be helping you digest your food, things like that. And these proteins, again, the code for how to make them is found in the DNA. Okay. So proteins are also polymers, so they're super long, complicated molecules. Um, and they are going to have repeating units as well. So, like DNA, they're going to have parts that repeat themselves. About 20% of your body is made of protein. You're basically protein and water. And then, as I was saying, proteins can do all sorts of jobs in the body. All right, so what is the repeating unit? So in DNA, if you remember, we had nucleotides just repeating themselves over and over and over and over again. What we've got here are amino acids now. So amino acids are represented by these little circles here. And what happens is your body is able to hook up these amino acids to make proteins. Okay. There's a bunch of different types of amino acids. There's 20 of them. You get them from the foods you eat. So when you remember, hopefully back to last year, you eat something made of protein, like steak, chicken, peanuts, tofu, whatever it is. Your digestive system's going to break it down into these little amino acids. Then those amino acids can be put together by the cells to make the proteins that you need. So when people say you are what you eat, this is pretty literal. So if I eat tofu for dinner tonight, my body can take that protein, break it down to the very, very basic pieces, the amino acids, and make different proteins that my body needs. Okay? So these building blocks, again, are coming from the food we eat, and the amino acids are the name of that building block. All right, so how does the cell know, though, what amino acids need to go in what order? Like, where's it getting that information? Well, that information is coded in our DNA. So there's going to be three things that we can make a new protein from. You're going to need your DNA, because that has your directions. You're going to have something called RNA, and we're going to have ribosomes, if you remember from last year. In the cell, the ribosomes are the the organelle that makes your proteins. Okay. And of course, we would need the amino acids, which would just kind of be floating around ready to go. All right. So the first step, if we're making a protein, we're going to actually unwind the DNA. And the DNA is going to unwind so we can read the gene. So remember, a gene is the bases that have the code. So we might need this code right here, ATG, ATGC. Okay, that would be a super duper short code. But let's say that right there is the code for making the protein that digests your food. Okay, helps digest your food. All right, so the body would be like, okay, I need this code. I need to know how to make that protein. Can we open up the book? Can we open up the DNA? So it's going to unwind. So there's our gene. Okay. They only need this side. They don't need the other side. Usually that side doesn't have any information on it. A little cartoon for you. Okay, step 2. We're going to make a copy of the DNA. We don't want it to leave the nucleus. So the DNA is nice and protected in the nucleus. It also is very sensitive to change. We don't want change. This is like your master recipe. We don't want changes to happen to your master recipe. We don't want damage to happen to your master recipe. So instead of bringing out the master recipe, we're going to make a copy of that recipe using something called RNA. So RNA is pretty much just like DNA. except it's got a slightly different sugar. It also cannot use the base T, so it uses a base called U in its place. So RNA is going to go in and make a complementary copy of the DNA. This kind of RNA is called messenger RNA. M for messenger, so mRNA. So you'll notice here's our RNA. It's like, okay, I need to know what's over here. So it's going to do the base pairs. So A is going to match to U instead of T because it can't use T. A is going to match to U, T is going to match to A. So it's matching up the bases. So we now know what bases were there, okay? Again, as a review, mRNA is messenger RNA and it's not going to use base T and uses U instead. So if you have an A instead of a T on RNA, we're going to have a U in that place. Okay, so once the RNA is able to get that complementary copy, it's going to go out to a ribosome. Ribosomes might be floating around like this in the cytoplasm, or they might be on the ER. Again, we learned about ER last year. So the ribosome has the ability to then read the RNA and put together the building blocks of the protein, which we called amino acids. This is what this looks like. So this is your ribosome in gray here. And the RNA is going to go through, the RNA is going to go through the middle here. And it's going to read the letters. So every 3 letters is one code for an amino acid. Okay, so what that means is if I have AGC, I'm going to attach this amino acid. Okay, and then the next area, I'm going to have UUU. Okay, that means I need to add this amino acid. And it's just going to use these letters as a code to see which amino acid, which building block it should add. So imagine, for example, you were building like a Lego house, right? And your brother gave you a code for it or something, I don't know. And he's like, okay, when you see GGG, that means we need a blue Lego block. Every time you see GGG in my instructions, that's what that means. And so you would see his instructions and he's like, okay, GGG. And you're like, all right, I need a blue Lego block. And then you're attaching them all together and eventually you end up building your house. The ribosome's doing the same thing. It's seeing that 3 letters and going, okay, that means I need this amino acid, this building block, add it, all done, got our protein. And that's it. Your protein is done. We're going to learn how to, in the next video, to read those codes. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask.